4th, 2023 Performance Committee meeting will now come to order. We are convened as of 8:31 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I'd respectfully ask everyone attending the meeting to please mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Thanks for joining us. Please note that this committee meeting of the RTD Board of Directors is being held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recording, along with unofficial minutes of this meeting, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. Visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available on RTD's YouTube page. I'll now go ahead and call for the roll of committee members. Director Busick.
Here.
Director Catlin.
Here.
Chair Geisinger.
Here.
Director Guzman. He is here.
I'm here. Sorry. I thought I could.
No problem. And Director Sloan.
Here.
And this is Director Davidson. I am here. That is 6 committee members present and 0 absent. I do not see any other directors with us this morning, but just would ask the board office to please flag me down and let me know if I need to note any for the record as we might be joined later. We'll now move into the public comment section. I'll open up for public comment to anyone who would like to address this committee regarding any topic in this published meeting agenda or the immediately preceding month's published agenda. If you wish to speak and have not done so, you can raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you are on the phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct responses. However, you're always welcome to email comments to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Do we have anybody on the line or that has submitted comments?
Director Davidson, this is Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. We do not have anyone in attendance who has indicated a desire to speak, and we did not receive any emailed public comments in advance of our meeting.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Kroll. Much appreciated. So with no other participants, or no participants, I should say, we'll close the public comment period and move into our recommended actions. There are 2 recommended actions on the agenda this morning. And the first recommended action is for the approval of the 2023 General Manager and CEO's performance appraisal and related compensation. This is for the Board of Directors to approve General Manager and GM CEO Deborah A. Johnson's attached performance appraisal for the period of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, known as the performance period, and in connection therewith to approve no corresponding monetary incentive award and no corresponding change to the 2024 adjusted base salary. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Sloan.
Second, Geisinger.
A motion from Director Sloan and a second from Chair Geisinger. Is there any discussion on this motion, on this action? All right, I thought there might be. Director Catlin, please.
Well, I have a question, and then I also the comment that the net promoter score, even though it's in the contract, is, in my opinion, something that we need to work on, since it doesn't necessarily reflect. It's a very literal and not subjective evaluation. But I was curious, did we receive all 15 directors' evaluations?
We did not. Thank you for the question. We received 13 out of 15 directors submitting comments and evaluations.
Because the math didn't work for me. Sorry. That's why I was just curious. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yes. Is that all great? Committee Vice Chair Sloan, please.
Thank you. I had the same question. And this is an additional question just for future edification. We did all do the subjective comments, both in person and in writing. And my expectation was, after there was so much notice of the fact they would not be anonymous. And in the past, the whole group has received all the comments. In this case, there were no comments provided to the board. And I was wondering what was behind that decision, although I can think of some reasons for it. And two, how was that decision reached?
Yeah, thank you, Director Sloan, for the question. So a couple of things. And also, first of all, I'd like to just note for the sake of the record that we're joined by Director Rosenthal. So thank you for joining us, sir. So yeah, Director Sloan, right, this is, so last year I believe I may have misspoken at a prior meeting. So I want to apologize for that in stating that the comments were part of the public report. Actually, last year, the comments were anonymous, but were not attached to the report, given the sensitive nature of the comments. So we, this year, did not have the comments be anonymous so that our CEO, our general manager and CEO could directly see the comments coming from each individual director, which would afford her the opportunity to ask for any clarifications and engage in one-on-one discussions with directors. With respect to comments being distributed to the full board, that's something I'd like to defer to Chair Geisinger and our legal counsel. We could have some discussion to make a determination around sharing that, because directly to your point, you're right. Although they were not in the full report, they were confidentially shared with the full board. And before speaking to that, I'd like to just take a look at the additional ramifications of that. I do see that General Manager and CEO Johnson has raised her hand, and perhaps you have a comment pertinent to this. So please go ahead if that's the case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning to all of you. Just a point of clarification, Director Sloan had indicated that I had received subjective comments from all members when we convened. I just wanted to point that out, that not all members were in attendance, since I did not receive subjective comments orally or verbally from all members. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for clarity on the record, the General Manager and CEO is referring to our executive session that was held for the discussion of her performance, at which we did have attendance of 14 out of 15 directors. And as noted earlier, the evaluation criteria, 13 out of 15 submitted their comments. I should also note, Director Sloan, that this General Manager and CEO has received all comments from all directors and has all of those comments in our non-anonymous format, thereby giving her a chance to reach out if she has any questions of clarification for any of the directors. So my apologies for any area that I misspoke on that. Chair Geisinger, do you have a question or comment on this this topic? Please go ahead.
I do, thanks. You know, it's a very good question, Director Sloan. I don't know that a decision has been made on sharing with the board. And so I'm happy to engage that with our CEO and with Director Davidson. And I think it's something we need to look at and make a decision. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Agreed, Chair Geisinger. And Director Catlin.
Thank you. Just a thought. Perhaps the source of the comments could be scrubbed, and other directors could see the general nature of the comments without identifying from whom they came, just to better understand what other directors might be feeling or evaluate. That's just a thought I had.
Yeah, that's a great thought. No matter what the I don't want to stop this discussion here, but no matter what, I will take an action to look at what is possible and what we can do in terms of sharing the comments with the full board. But then also to the question about why these wouldn't be necessarily publicly. These were sensitive matters regarding to personnel matters as discussed in the executive session. There is overlap with the executive session, which is ultimately why these will remain, the comments will remain confidential. So Director Sloan, is it any comments, feedback, thoughts regarding this topic?
No, it sounds like it's still an open question and maybe can be dealt with later. But I was just curious because, you know, that had changed from prior years. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Sloan. Other questions or discussion items? I just wanted to make a note as we do vote on this, that the attached appraisal reflects the board's assessment of the GM and CEO's performance not meeting expectations with regards to 3 out of 4 of the success outcomes, and that she did meet all expectations with respect to the organizational values. And I just wanted to say, not surprisingly, as the chair of the performance committee, I'd like to express my strong belief, as I believe many of us agree with, that there's an opportunity to dramatically improve the metrics we use to measure the short-term annual performance of the general manager and CEO of RTD. This board and this GM CEO did work together and did agree on the net promoter scores as a way to determine whether we are making gains in the areas of customer excellence, community value, and employee ownership. I think it has become increasingly clear that changes to net promoter score in the transit space take consistent and deliberate action over a sustained period of time, almost certainly longer than a year. So while I personally believe it remains for us to measure and improve NPS over time, I do believe it's paramount for us to revise the way we measure the annual performance. And I also just wanted to note, for the sake of the record with delivering this, that as the chair of this committee, it is my opinion that there is very strong support from directors agreeing that Ms. Johnson has met the organizational values of the agency, and that this strong agreement exhibits support for her overall performance. And it's in my view that this was only possible because Ms. Johnson met those organizational values by indeed focusing on our strategic priorities, and indeed by doing things that have and will improve RTD's ability to deliver improved customer excellence, enhance our RTD's community value, build more employee ownership within the agency, and continue to ensure RTD's financial success. Such activities that she did this year to achieve that include major milestones such as the completion of the fare study and equity analysis that resulted in a fare structure that's more affordable, equitable, and simple than all of our prior fare structures. Another such activity involved putting our enhanced financial stability that we have achieved to work to initiate a year-long pilot offering zero fare for youth. That's leveraging financial success that we have achieved to improve community value and customer excellence. So it is my opinion that our CEO and our general manager and CEO is performing very well. I think we see strong support for her in this analysis, particularly on the organizational values. With that, I'll close my comments and just say thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your work. With that, with no other discussion or questions, I will go ahead and ask, are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none, the motion carries with 6 ayes and 0 noes. The next action is the 5th amendment to the general manager and CEO employment contract. This is for the board of directors to adopt a 5th amendment to the employment agreement with general manager and CEO Deborah A. Johnson to adjust the annual deadline by which the board shall adopt the weighted success outcomes, organizational values, and goals, and the distribution of the compensation increase between base salary and incentive compensation for the upcoming performance period from December 31st to January 31st as set forth in the proposed amendment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
I heard Chair Geisinger as the movement and Committee Vice Chair Sloan as the second. Before opening up to discussion from others, I just wanted to state it is my belief, as is stated in the packet, that if we move to the January 31st deadline on a go-forward basis, we allow ourselves the time to complete the evaluation process and leverage that context to set goals for the next performance period. I also believe it is important that, given the way this board is structured and the way we are elected, to ensure that a board that has been in place for a performance period completes its evaluation by the end of the year, December 31st, just as we have it. However, that any new incoming directors who may be coming in January have an opportunity to weigh in on the goals that are being set for the performance period in the month that they are joining. I know we have an ongoing discussion right now regarding next year's goals. I just want to make sure that this is very clear. We're making this amendment or putting this amendment forward to make this adjustment on a go-forward basis as better process. I also believe that this is going to give us some time to revisit structures that we have in place with respect to the compensation increase math that is leveraged based on those Net Promoter Score goals. So with that, I just wanted to provide that additional context. I'll open up for any questions or comments from directors. Director Guzman, please.
How is this going to affect the calendar for work for this committee? At the end of this packet, it says our next meeting isn't until March, and this will push meetings up sooner or earlier in the year, I guess, to finish that work. Has any thought been given to what the workflow and the calendar looks like?
That is a great question, Director Guzman.
Allow me to just say, I think we should be meeting more often, not less, because of the type of work that this committee does. And so March seems really far away for me to be working on performance or goals or anything else. So we also get slammed at the end of the year with the budget process. And December is a month that we don't typically have many meetings. So this makes a lot of sense on that end.
Yeah, thank you, Director Guzman. It's a great question. And and certainly the performance committee is going to need to meet in January, and we'll need to meet to work on this. I have agreed with our general manager and CEO, our chief people officer, Charlene Pelleggi, who has been a very helpful subject matter expert in this, our general counsel Snyder, and Chair Geisinger. We had a chance to discuss this last week, and I have committed to put together a framework for us to react to in collaboration with Ms. Pelleggi as our subject matter expert, and in collaboration with Ms. Johnson, who has put forward her recommended goals for the 2024 performance period. At that point, I also put together some suggestions about how we engage and accomplish this work by January 31st. One suggestion that has been floated, and certainly open to any reactions folks may have here, is to actually leverage the time at the special board meeting early in January at which we elect officers to continue the discussion with respect to goals that was started in the executive session in November. So leveraging that meeting when all directors are together, since this is a full board interest and matter, is one suggestion. And then directly to your point, certainly the performance committee itself will need to meet at least once in January to move things forward. So happy to open up to any reactions, questions, thoughts that folks have on that. But I am working on what the cadence would need to be in January, although this is my last official meeting as chair of this committee here, as well as a framework for us to react to so we can accomplish this in January. Any other question? Oh yeah, please, Director Guzman, please.
I just thoughts from the GM CEO, are we good with this? Do you think that change is a good one? If that's okay to ask.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Thank you very kindly for the question, Director Guzman. I'm the one that actually put forward the recommendation to extend it to January 31st for the issues that Chair Davidson outlined. And more specifically, I'm gonna step outside of myself for a minute. And when we had this conversation, recognizing the timeline that you emphasized, when Chair Davidson and I had a conversation about this, I asked him, would he be committed to shepherding this? Because to the points that you raised, usually in March we get crammed and then it's like, you know, Groundhog Day all over again. So recognizing what I just outlined, I am fine with the approach going forward, recognizing that January 31st is the date. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Chair Geisinger, please.
Yeah, just to emphasize that the point you read and made, that this will be an annual change. It's not just for this year, but is for moving forward. I think it's a really good change, not only the date, but changing the goals from the MPS. We may have the MPS scores, but having other objective criteria that really shows the changes in the agency and the changes that Ms. Johnson has brought about, I think is real important. You know, I'm happy to help with what you're putting together, Eric, and it may be that it makes sense to get something out to people even before the end of this month. We'll see how that shapes up, you know, so people can start thinking about it, because January 31st, as we know, will come up quickly on this topic. So thanks.
I agree, and we're about to benefit from fewer meetings in the month of December, which affords, I think, directors the opportunity to do some more work out in preparation. So wholeheartedly agree. Other questions, comments, discussion? All right, with that, I'll ask, are there any no votes on this action? All right. With that, the motion passes. That's again 6 ayes, 0 noes. Thank you for that. We'll now move into other matters. Are there any other matters to come before this committee this morning? Yes, Director Sloan, please.
Doing all my checking, lower hand. I would just like to raise the elephant in the room that, again, traditionally we do salary setting in December, and it would probably be at the performance committee meeting. And I've not heard any discussion of that at, you know, going forward at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Director Sloan. We do have an agenda item this evening to discuss the outcome of the compensation philosophy, our compensation analysis, and a potential path forward for responding to that will be on the agenda this evening. With respect to performance, I'll just state very bluntly, my belief at least, that we need to revise and amend the performance compensation with respect to the meeting of goals and success outcomes. I think it's especially important to note, for example, that the current contract with the general manager and CEO requires that all performance metrics are achieved in order to be eligible for base salary increase or incentive compensation. That's interesting because we have math in Exhibit B of the agreement that shows the distribution between success outcomes and organizational values or objective and subjective criteria. And while we have that distribution, it actually requires meeting all metrics to be eligible. So I think that we have to revise the performance pay. That's something that I think we should revisit in conjunction with what we're doing on goals for the performance period in 2024 in January. So there's two things here. There's base salary based on market, and there is incentive compensation. Both need to be revisited. The base salary with respect to market needs to be revisited with respect to our compensation philosophy and the compensation analysis that we aged the band on from the Gallagher report. And then completely separate issue, we have the performance-based compensation that I think needs to be revisited later. Tonight, we will be addressing and discussing the first of those items, which is how to respond to the compensation analysis and compensation philosophy. Does that answer your question, Director Sloan?
In a way, but it raises another question, and that is, do we have a contractual or ethical deadline to provide our GM CEO with their compensation going forward before the year begins?
I believe so taking the two separately, I'd like to defer to General Counsel Snyder on the any obligations that we have with respect to compensation analysis in the contract and our compensation philosophy, and whether we have any obligations to answer that. And then I believe I can answer the second portion of that, which is with respect to the performance period. So General Counsel Snyder, is any comments you would like to make on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So for clarity, the recommended action that this committee just passed did, as read by Chair Davidson, it did state that this committee is not adopting any compensation adjustments associated with the adoption of the appraisal. So that actually did happen consistent with the contract.
So that's to the performance. Thank you for that, General Counsel Snyder. So as far as the performance portion of the pay, which is increased base salary and incentive compensation, we are adopting before December 31st, no increase and no incentive compensation based on the adopted weighted success outcomes and the goals. So we've adopted that by December 31st. The amendment we passed will move any adjustments to compensation, to performance-based compensation, to January 31st. So we'll be adopting both the goals and also the framework for incentive compensation in January. That's what I'm saying. I think both of those need to be revisited, not just the goals, but also the framework we use for performance compensation. So that's, I think, what General Counsel Snyder was referring to as the performance-based compensation. The adapting to market and market data is something that we'll be discussing this evening for a forthcoming recommended action in the month of January. Director Sloan?
That's all at this time. It's an unusual approach.
Thank you, Director Sloan. Director Catlin?
Yeah, I agree with Director Sloan. For the record, though, there will be a COLA adjustment to the salary automatically, correct?
Correct. That has already taken place. It was a 5.4% increase.
Thank you.
General Manager Johnson, did you have a comment?
Thank you. No, I took my hand down.
Okay, thank you. Director Catlin?
Yeah, you know what? We as elected board members have the responsibility to evaluate the GM CEO's performance. And I am very disappointed that we had two directors that did not take that job seriously. I mean, for whatever reason, maybe there was a good excuse, but I think I just wanted to state publicly that I believe that we should have 15 directors participating in this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Catlin.
Sorry to
I completely agree.
Sorry to lecture, but I'm just disappointed.
Thank you, Director Catlin. I completely agree. Director Guzman, please.
I want to raise two things. One, here. Director Catlin, I absolutely agree with you. It is frustrating to no end that the entire board did not participate in this. I don't think there is a healthy excuse for why somebody wouldn't have gotten this done. We gave plenty of time and an extension. Second thing is, how do we proceed forward with what our goals will look like? How do we set better metrics going forward into the future for this type of evaluation? I mean, I am absolutely frustrated beyond no end that we get back this wonderful news that we're doing well in comparison to the nation, but because even though I trust that the math was done correctly, even though we didn't beat the scores from last year here locally, which I find really hard to believe if we're doing as well as we are compared to other places in our country. How do we as a board adjust and correct path to provide realistic goals that are both challenging, gap goals that are going to require a stretch, and then a fair evaluation to, Ms. Deborah Johnson, who is doing an incredible job right now, which is full of frustration and full of technicality. And I would not want to be in the hot seat at this point of the CEO GM of RTD because there's so much to do, but she's making amazing strides. And that's me personally. I just wouldn't want that job, right? It would not be the job that I would take. But as a director from the outside looking in at the agency and as a member of the community, how do we as a group improve this process and ensure that we don't have less than 100% participation next year, more thorough feedback on an ongoing basis, and all of that work that needs to be put into this, right? So it's not just one big cluster bomb. Even in January, if we give ourselves the extension of time to do this, that throughout the year we're providing the right kinds of feedback and hearing and listening to our GM CEO give us the information we need to help support her in role and to help make policy decisions and provide direction that is needed throughout the year in a way that will allow us to keep moving on challenging goals, but also improve the system, keep everything in a state of good repair, make sure we've got people hired, all of the wonderful things that we're doing. How do we do that? Does anybody have even a compass to go on a path somewhere? Because I'm not sure that I even understand after looking at this year's process, how we're going to do this next year and not end up in a rinse, wash, and repeat cycle. Something is broken and it needs to change, but I'm not quite sure I understand what that is.
Yeah, thank you, Director Guzman. Those are, I think, really salient, probing questions. And I agree with where they're coming from. I'll just say there's two things top of my mind and see what reactions some others have. One is the work plan next year should include a discussion around goals for the 2025 performance period about halfway through the year. So I think we need to be starting the goals discussion, even though we would pass them in January 31st. I think that discussion, that work needs to begin towards the middle of the year and take up a lot of what the second half of the year looks like. The second recommendation I would have would be that the performance committee, and this is the work that needs to be done in January, and I don't expect that the 2024 period will be perfect, but every period should get better thereafter, should have high-level metrics that the agency tracks on an annual basis, like we did with NPS, but metrics that give us a more near-term look at how we're moving. And then what I would hope is that performance committee would be in a more regular cadence on perhaps at least a quarterly basis, receiving updates on how we're doing against all of those measurements. So we need to adopt some of those things that we can measure. The general manager put forward her recommended goals for us. Those are things that we could be doing report outs or check-ins on a quarterly basis. So in my mind, just to summarize it, I think we need to be talking about goals earlier in the year. And I also believe that we need a series of metrics like NPS, but are more near term so that the performance committee can actually get a look at how things are going on a more frequent basis. And General Manager, I see your hand is up, so please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I wanted to offer up some comments to Director Guzman's statements. First and foremost, I want you all to recognize that this agency is on the precipice of change. And I don't know how many people have been involved with change management, but it doesn't happen overnight. So when I did assume this job, what attracted me to this job was actually being able to come in and help the organization holistically, because I'm one that leans into opportunity. And with that being said, as the name of our strategic plan, you cannot spell the word challenge without change. So I don't expect to see anything that happens for the betterment. There's going to be incremental steps. And if we continue on this path, we will eventually see change, but I don't predict that for the next few years. So with that as a backdrop, just for everybody's edification, we as an agency do have metrics that we track. We have key performance indicators, and generally in the transit industry, they're typically lagging, not leading indicators. We are having conversations relative to leading indicators as it relates to what you all look at holistically, recognizing your constituents want to know when their bus, when their light rail car or their commuter rail consist is showing up. All of these things that we do from a key performance indicator feed into our service availability and our on-time performance. And quite naturally, we are a labor-intensive organization. So as we talk about hiring, once again, as I have said numerous times, we are focused on retention. In order to do retention, we have to be leaning into the moment to ensure that we create an environment where people can do their ultimate best. And this organization decimated the opportunity for organizational development and learning and training and things of the like. So I just wanted to share that holistically, because I don't want anybody walking away from this meeting thinking that we don't have metrics, because trust and believe, if we didn't have metrics, we wouldn't be recipient of federal dollars, because we provide data into the National Data Transit Base that enables us to factor in how much money we're eligible through Section 5307. That's how we get those federal funds. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to say that we, i.e. me, as well as the board, we're in the midst of a two-party agreement. So we need to collectively agree what that is, because I do think MPS is valuable, but those are long-term goals. And basically they're short-term goals. And so what I would endeavor to do with you all support is ensuring that you have an understanding of what we're doing and where we're going. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to understand what MDBF is, mean distance between failure, because it's different on rail than it is on bus, but that enables us to ensure that we can provide service. And so basically having the opportunity to educate and inform you all about that will put you in a better place so you can be more responsive to your constituency. So thank you very much, Director Guzman, for the question, and Director and Chair Davidson for the opportunity to offer up those comments.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager and CEO Johnson. I think well stated. And the idea of whether this board, and thank you for acknowledging the two-party engagement. I think there is always that separation between what we're measuring as an agency and what we're agreeing as a board and General Manager and CEO to measure against performance of the General Manager and CEO position. I think that's exactly a discussion to have around leading and lagging indicators and around how those tie into the short-term, near-term goals, which I look forward to collaborating with you all on in January. Other comments, questions? Chair Geisinger, please.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with all of that. I'm looking forward to changing the goals. I want to go back to a conversation we had a little while ago that Director Sloan and Director Catlin weighed in on, which is sharing the answers to the comments with the whole board and get this committee's weigh in on a good approach. I think there's some value in Director Catlin's suggestions that we not put people's names on them, but we haven't really had this discussion. I don't want to surprise people. The fact that we did it last year should help not surprise people, but what do you think? Should we, I tend towards sharing them and potentially not having the names on them, but rather than making a top-down decision, I'd like at least to hear from this committee.
Would anyone like to comment? Dr. Busick, please.
Thanks. I don't think I need to share those. I know what I think and I know what I believe, and my beliefs and regarding the general manager's performance will not change based on what other people think. Thanks.
Dr. Sloan?
Sure. I can see both sides to it. I do like the idea of leaving the names off. But in terms of surprise, it seemed that went in the other direction, that we didn't get them with this packet, because that was the previous expectation.
Okay.
Dr. Guzman?
So I was really prompted to advocate for making sure that we approach this work in a manner that was transparent for the CEO. And I said, you know, you don't write a Yelp review for somebody's work review, period. You have to put your name on it. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to this. I do believe that we should probably get some weigh-in from CEO Jim Johnson on this and where she stands. I believe that's fair to ask our employees. We are the committee responsible for this work. However, if we do make it public, you know, let me rephrase that. If we do, under our privilege as directors, share this information with one another, okay, the responsible manner of dealing with this is to respect that everybody's going to have a different opinion. We share a lot in common. Clearly, the scores are not 100% by accident on some of those criteria. And so we need to keep that in mind. Names don't need to be attached. And as Director Busick said, we've already turned these in. It's not going to change the outcome. So at this point, it's maybe a post-mortem on how the review process went. However, I do believe that by providing the work in a manner that was thoughtful, that could be shared, that could be made public with the director's name on it, also prompted and necessitated a way of writing the review that creates a different type of outcome, right? Which is, if I put my name on it and this becomes public, then I am going to have to answer for what I wrote in that document. So we're not under any obligation legally to share the narrative part of our review, is my understanding. Both now and last year, that conversation came up. That's a choice that we as a board can make. How we share that information with each other or with the public is a totally different conversation. And I think that's what we're getting at here. So I'm good either way, but I don't know that I need to see necessarily anybody else's review remarks. I know that Deborah knows what I said, and if she has questions about my review, she can come to me directly because my name was on it. And that was the point. I don't necessarily need to know who didn't participate, because that's not going to help at this point. The reviews have been submitted. But I do think going forward, maybe we as a body need to have a conversation about the expectation that everybody will participate and that there will be no misses next year on any of this.
Thanks.
Director Sloan?
Yes, one other thought is that we might consider making public the members who submitted their evaluations, as opposed to singling out the people who didn't. I think it's important as a board for us all to have a responsibility. And I don't think there should be an anonymous non-participator.
Just a quick question. When you say making public, do you mean sharing it with the board?
Right, sharing with the board, saying, you know, we have evaluations from these people. And it could lend peer pressure to providing, you know, more input in the future from the entire board.
Thanks.
Director Callan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My thoughts about sharing the comments without names was in response to Director Sloan's question about why they weren't in the packet. I really don't personally need to see those comments. I just offered it up as a suggestion, so I'm good either way.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to state for the record that I was very disappointed that 2 people chose not to participate, since that's something they were elected to do. And I don't want to publicly shame them or do anything like that. I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you, Director Catlin. Director Geisinger, did that give you the kind of feedback you were looking for in that discussion?
That's helpful. Thanks.
Any other discussion on that or any other matters? Well, I'd just like to note, I know this is difficult, but thank you for going on this journey this year. This is the final performance committee of 2023. Again, I urge us all to collaborate in January to improve the manner in which we measure general manager and CEO performance, and to do that in a more granular, more near-term way, and in a manner that has a material impact on the performance pay in the contract. So I thank you for the work this year. Appreciate it. We will be meeting this evening, again, December 4th, 2023, at a special board meeting to bring these recommended actions forward, as well as to have some further discussion regarding compensation. The next calendared meeting date, as noted by Director Guzman of the Performance Committee, is March 18th, 2024. But as discussed, I believe the expectation is there will be at least one, if not more than one, Performance Committee meeting in the month of January 2024. So with that, with no further discussion, this meeting will be adjourned as of 9:18 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you, everybody.